In the far future, where there is only war, love is not a gift, it is a burden. In the Imperium of man, life itself is hard enough, but the act of holding on to another person, of daring to care for them, is seen as weakness. Yet, despite the vast machinery of the Imperium grinding down souls into obedient servants, couples still try to survive. Their love flickers like a candle in a storm, fragile and desperate, often crushed under the weight of endless duty. In the streets of a hive world, where billions of humans live shoulder to shoulder, couples cling to one another in secret. A man might work endless hours in the manufactorums, his lungs clogged with soot, his back bent from labor, and his only solace is the brief embrace of the woman waiting at home. Their moments together are stolen from the cruelty of existence. They cannot afford to dream of a future because the Imperium has no place for dreams. To love in such a place is to defy despair, and yet despair is always stronger. Every whispered promise of tomorrow may be broken by a conscription order, a factory accident, or an unexpected knock at the door from the Inquisition. Some couples live under the shadow of faith, their love measured and watched by priests of the ecclesiarchy. To show too much affection, too much devotion to each other, is to risk being accused of placing another above the emperor. Lovers have been dragged from their homes, accused of heresy for giving their hearts fully to another instead of to the master of mankind. Husbands and wives often learn to hide their passion, replacing open tenderness with cold formality in public, because even neighbors may report them. Yet behind closed doors, when prayers are done and candles extinguished, they cling to each other like drowning souls clutching driftwood. In war zones, the story becomes even harsher. Soldiers of the Astra Militarum are torn from their families and thrown into endless campaigns. Many never return, leaving widows and widowers behind, their grief drowned in the monotony of imperial duty. Some couples serve side by side, yet even then, their lives are fragile threads ready to snap. Imagine two guardsmen standing in the same trench, one cut down by last fire, while the other fights on, too broken to scream, too loyal to disobey. They share stolen glances in the midst of chaos, quick words of comfort before charging into certain death. For them, love is not romance, it is the strength to hold a weapon one more day. There are darker stories, too. Some couples are bound not only by love, but by fear. In the shadow of the Inquisition, secrets can destroy entire bloodlines. A woman may discover her husband has been touched by warped taint, his dreams haunted by whispers. She cannot betray him, yet to stay silent is to risk damnation, so she holds him at night, knowing that one day she may have to turn him in, or worse, kill him herself to save his soul. This is the kind of bond that exists in the Imperium, where survival demands sacrifice, and even love is laced with terror. Among the nobles of the Imperium, love is not chosen, it is arranged. Marriages are contracts, binding families together for power and survival. True affection is rare, yet sometimes it sparks, hidden beneath the weight of duty. A noble daughter may find herself trapped with a cruel husband, yet her heart belongs to the soldier who guards her gates. They steal moments in the corridors, never daring to hope for more, for discovery means death for them both. These affairs, however tragic, are one of the few ways love survives in the higher ranks of imperial society, where every union is political and every child is a pawn. The Imperium does not reward love. It rewards obedience, loyalty, and sacrifice. Couples who cling to each other do so at great cost, knowing the galaxy is vast and merciless. For every pair who manage to survive, 100 are torn apart by war, by faith, by suspicion, or by simple cruelty. And yet, in the midst of this darkness, there are still those who dare. A man might carve a small trinket for his wife before going to war. A woman might hide letters from her husband beneath the floorboards so the priests never see, and young lovers might meet in hidden tunnels beneath the hives, whispering their feelings like forbidden prayers. To love in Warhammer 40K is not simply to live, it is to defy the galaxy itself. Every act of devotion is a rebellion against despair. Every touch is an act of defiance against a universe that demands nothing but obedience. And for that reason, even when it is doomed, even when it ends in fire, couples still fight to hold on to one another. Because in a place where there is only war, love, no matter how fleeting, becomes the bravest act of all. On a distant agri world where fields stretch endlessly beneath skies blackened by ash from orbiting warships, couples live a life that seems quiet only on the surface. To outsiders, these worlds look like havens, farmlands feeding billions, simple people who plow the earth and reap their crops. But for the men and women who dare to love each other here, there is nothing peaceful. Their lives are dictated by quotas, overseers, and tithes that never end. The Imperial Guard comes without warning, conscripting husbands or wives, leaving broken families in their wake. A man might return home at dusk expecting to hold his wife, only to find she has been taken for service on another world, never to be seen again. Even in the soil itself there is despair. Farmers labor in endless mud, their hands cracked and bleeding, while their partners wait in crumbling farmhouses, haunted by fear of famine. When the crops fail, it is not nature that punishes them. It is the Imperium. Couples are whipped, executed, or publicly humiliated if they fail to meet the Emperor's tithe. A husband might sacrifice meals for weeks so his wife can eat, hiding his hunger until his body breaks under exhaustion. A wife might work herself to death, her last words whispered not to the Emperor, but to the man she leaves behind. These stories are buried under silence, for the Administratum only records production numbers, not the tears spilled over barren fields. On hive worlds, the struggle takes a different form. In a city where billions of lives press together in steel and smog, couples rarely find privacy. Their love must exist in shadows. Entire districts are patrolled by enforcers, and the ecclesiarchy demands every soul's devotion belong only to the Emperor. Lovers who hold hands too long or whisper words too sweet risk suspicion. Neighbors report neighbors, friends betray friends, and sometimes even partners betray each other to prove loyalty to the Imperium. To love openly is dangerous, and so couples hide. They meet in abandoned tunnels beneath the hive, where dripping water and rusting pipes are their only witnesses. There in the dark, a kiss becomes a rebellion. Some couples never see each other except during shifts. One works in the manufactorum during the day, while the other works through the night. Their only connection is a note left on a table, written in trembling hands before exhaustion claims them. These notes are often short, barely more than a line, "I love you." Stay safe, but they mean more than sermons and prayers. They are proof that in the grinding machine of the hive, humanity has not yet been extinguished. Yet tragedy always lurks. A factory accident, a plague outbreak, or a sudden purge can erase those fragile lives in an instant. The love that survived so much is lost without ceremony, swallowed by the noise of billions marching on. In war zones, couples face the cruelest fate. Some are both drafted into the Astra Militarum. A husband and wife may find themselves fighting on opposite ends of a battlefield, neither knowing if the other still lives. The screams of war drown out their memories, and the smoke of burning cities blots out hope. Sometimes they serve together in the same regiment, a rare mercy, but one that is often brief. A single artillery strike can turn lovers into corpses lying side by side in the mud, unrecognizable even to each other. Their names are not honored, their sacrifice not remembered. They are just another statistic in the Emperor's endless crusade. And yet some cling to each other even as the world burns. Soldiers share a ration pack in a trench, whispering promises they know cannot be kept. They exchange lockets or scraps of cloth, desperate tokens of love that might survive longer than they do. For those left behind, the pain is worse. A woman watches the transport ships vanish into the sky, carrying her husband away to a war from which he will never return. She waits for years, raising children alone, until she finally accepts that he is gone. Yet even then, She lights a candle every night, whispering his name as though he can hear her across the stars. The Imperium calls it loyalty to the Emperor, but she knows it is loyalty to him. Every candle she lights is an act of mourning and defiance, a refusal to forget the man she loved. In the underworld of cities and colonies, another kind of couple struggles to survive. Criminals, heretics, and rebels are hunted relentlessly by the Inquisition, and many of them cling to each other not out of love alone, but out of necessity. A man and woman bound by crime, hiding in sewers, sharing scraps of food, they may not have chosen each other in another life, but in the Imperium's crushing fist, their survival depends on staying together. Yet this bond is fragile. When the Inquisition closes in, one may betray the other to save themselves. Some do, but some refuse. There are stories of couples holding each other even as flamers roar through the tunnels, choosing to burn together rather than live apart. Among the nobility, love is chained by politics. Marriages are arranged to secure alliances, and affection is considered dangerous. A nobleman's wife may smile beside him in public, but in her heart she despises him. Her true love might be a servant, a bodyguard, or even a sworn enemy. These secret loves burn fiercely but briefly, always discovered, always punished. Nobles are executed or disgraced, while their lower-born lovers vanish into dungeons, never to be seen again. Yet, despite the risk, such affairs continue. For even in palaces gilded with gold, the same truth holds. To love is to defy the Imperium's chains. In the quiet of monasteries and shrines, there are other couples, bound not by romance, but by shared faith. Pilgrims traveling together through the void, reciting litanies, may form bonds deeper than blood. They find in each other not only companionship, but strength to endure. But even these bonds are fragile. If one falters in their devotion, the other must decide. Do they protect their partner, or do they condemn them as a heretic? Love and faith cannot coexist easily in the Imperium, and so even these bonds end in tragedy. The galaxy offers no sanctuary. Every corner, every world, every city is designed to break the human spirit. And yet couples endure. They write each other's names in secret. They carve promises into walls. They pass down whispered stories to their children. They cling to one another even when there is no hope. Their struggle is not just against hunger, war, or death. It is against a universe that insists they should not exist at all. In the grim darkness of the far future, couples do not thrive. They survive, if only barely. Their love is fragile, fleeting, often doomed from the start. But in that fragility lies something powerful. A husband's hand gripping his wife's as soldiers march him away. A wife's tears hidden beneath the sound of factory machines. A soldier's last words whispered to his comrade, who also happens to be his lover. These moments may be lost to history, but they are what keep humanity alive in a galaxy built to erase it. On the war-torn frontier worlds of the Imperium, couples endure a kind of torment that is difficult to imagine. These are planets under constant siege, where alien raiders, heretical cults, and the endless wars of mankind reduce life to rubble. For a husband and wife, or for two lovers who dare to cling to one another, there is no comfort. Each sunrise is a reminder that today may be their last together. The air itself is choked with ash, the ground trembling from distant artillery. And yet they try to hold hands to whisper promises of survival, knowing that fate rarely allows such mercy. Every conscription order tears couples apart without ceremony. A soldier might be dragged to the front lines while his partner watches helplessly, begging the commissars for leniency. There is no leniency in the Imperium. A lover's tears are considered weakness, and weakness is punished. There are stories of commissars executing crying wives in front of their husbands to test their faith, demanding the soldier fight harder in the emperor's name. In this way, love itself becomes a liability, something the Imperium despises because it competes with devotion to the emperor. Couples know this truth, but they still cling to each other in the shadows, even though discovery could mean death. When war arrives in the form of the great devourer, orcs or traitors, survival becomes almost impossible. Civilians flee into bunkers with nothing but the clothes on their backs, hoping to find their partners alive when they emerge. Many do not. The lucky ones hold each other in dark caverns as shells explode overhead, whispering stories to distract from the sounds of death. The unlucky are separated by stampedes, lost in smoke and fire, each believing the other to be dead. Some couples reunite weeks later, skeletal from hunger but still alive, and that reunion becomes their greatest victory. Others never find each other again, and their love ends not with closure, but with uncertainty that lingers like poison. Even in moments of respite, the Imperium does not allow couples peace. On warfront colonies, love is regulated by decree. Citizens are paired by order of the administratum to maximize productivity, forced into unions without affection. A woman may be ordered to marry a stranger because the population demands more children. A man may be forbidden from seeing the woman he loves because she is assigned to another. These bonds of bureaucracy are cold and loveless, but many couples defy them in secret, finding ways to meet despite the risk. They share stolen hours together, knowing that if discovered, they could be executed for sedition. Still, they risk everything, because even brief moments of love are worth more than a lifetime of servitude. On feudal worlds, where knights march in the emperor's name and peasants toil under chains, couples face struggles of a different kind. Marriage is often arranged by lords, with love treated as a frivolity reserved for songs, not reality. A husband might serve as a squire, while his wife is handed to another lord as part of a trade agreement. They see each other only across crowded courtyards, a glance that means more than words but can never be spoken. Those who defy their masters running away together are hunted like criminals. The ecclesiarchy calls it a sin to place mortal love above the god emperor, and many are burned alive for it. Yet the fact that couples still dare to try shows the strength of their defiance. Some worlds tell stories of lovers who endured even under the eye of the Inquisition. When one partner is accused of heresy, the other is given a choice: abandon them or share their fate. Many abandon, too terrified to face torture, but some do not. There are tales of wives standing beside husbands accused of consorting with demons, holding their hands as they are led to the pyre. There are husbands who throw themselves upon the flames to die with their condemned wives. To the Imperium, this is heresy, but to those who still believe in love, it is loyalty of the purest kind. These stories are whispered in secret, warnings and inspirations at once. Even aboard void ships, where generations live and die in the corridors of steel, couples cannot escape struggle. Families exist in cramped hab blocks, where entire lineages share the same recycled air and dim light. A man might love a woman from another deck, but the ship's strict hierarchies forbid their union. To meet, they must navigate dangerous maintenance shafts, dodging servitors and tech priests who would see their disobedience as treason. Sometimes they succeed, carving a small life together in a corner of the ship forgotten by its masters. Sometimes they are caught, separated forever, one assigned to labor near the engines, the other cast into penal servitude. The distance between them may be only a few bulkheads, but in the endless labyrinth of a void ship, it may as well be entire worlds apart. What makes the struggle of couples in the Imperium so cruel is not only the separation, but the erasure. Their love is not recorded, their sacrifices are not remembered. When a husband dies in battle, the administratum logs only a number. When a wife starves herself to feed her husband, her grave is unmarked. The Imperium demands loyalty to the emperor alone, and so every other bond is considered insignificant. And yet, it is precisely these insignificant bonds that sustain humanity. A whispered "I love you" means more to a starving worker than the promise of salvation. A hand held in the darkness brings more strength than sermons screamed by priests. The galaxy does not forgive couples for daring to exist, and yet they endure. They write each other's names on scraps of parchment, hidden inside boots. They trade tiny tokens, a button, a lock of hair, as symbols of devotion. They create legacies not for the Imperium but for each other. Their love is fragile, but that fragility is its power. In a universe built on suffering, to love another person is the greatest act of rebellion. Couples may never win against the grim darkness, but by surviving even a single day together, they carve out victories that the Imperium cannot erase. On shrine worlds where faith defines every aspect of existence, couples live under the crushing weight of piety. Every marriage is a union first with the Emperor and only second with one another. The ecclesiarchy demands loyalty above all, and any love that threatens to eclipse devotion to the God Emperor is treated as blasphemy. For two lovers, even married ones, every touch is monitored, every word measured. Priests stalk the streets, watching for signs of excess intimacy, for laughter that lingers too long, for whispers spoken in shadows. To love another more than one loves the Emperor is heresy, and heresy means death. Yet behind closed doors and candlelit rooms cluttered with relics, couples risk everything to share their humanity. They whisper vows the priests would call forbidden, holding one another as though that embrace itself could defy the galaxy's cruelty. On hive worlds, the struggle is different, but no less suffocating. Millions of people are stacked in endless towers of rust and ash, choking on fumes that blacken the sky. Couples live shoulder to shoulder in tiny cells where privacy does not exist, surrounded by noise, hunger, and the constant stench of decay. For them, love is not a quiet rebellion, but a desperate grasp for something real. A husband might sell his ration card to buy a flower from a corpse-strewn alley just to make his wife smile for one night. A wife might fight off gang press gangers in the lower levels to protect her husband from conscription into a gang war. Every act of devotion becomes dangerous, because in the underhive nothing is free. Every kindness invites exploitation. And yet, amid this oppression, couples carve out moments of beauty. A shared meal of stale bread, eaten as though it were a feast. A kiss stolen in a stairwell while enforcers march below. These fragile pieces of joy become the anchors that keep them from drowning in despair. For couples bound to the Astra Militarum, love is tested in blood and fire. A soldier's life expectancy is measured in weeks, sometimes days. Marriage vows are spoken quickly before deployment, often in crowded camps beneath banners of the Imperium, with priests shouting blessings over dozens of pairs at once. For these couples, there is no promise of growing old together. Instead, their vows are carved into fragments of memory: a farewell kiss before boarding a transport, a name scratched into the butt of a laser gun, a whispered prayer that both survive the next assault. Husbands and wives fight side by side, and sometimes they die side by side, their bodies buried together in shallow graves. Other times, one survives, while the other is lost to the mud and fire, and the survivor must march on without closure. Love in the Guard is a gamble where the house always wins, but couples still play, because to march into war without hope is to march already dead. Even among the higher echelons of the Imperium, love is not spared. Noble families arrange marriages not for affection, but for power. A young woman might be given as a bride to secure an alliance between planetary governors, her heart silenced in favor of politics. A young man might be forced to marry a stranger chosen by his house, while the woman he truly loves is cast into exile to remove temptation. These noble couples endure gilded cages, where every glance and gesture is weighed by courtiers and spies. To hold hands in public is an act of theater, not tenderness. Yet even here, behind velvet curtains and marble walls, forbidden love blooms. Secret letters are smuggled through couriers, trysts are stolen during endless ceremonies, and sometimes, very rarely, a noble defies their duty to choose love instead of politics. Such defiance rarely ends well. Assassins in the night ensure that devotion to family and duty outweighs devotion to one another. Among the Adeptus Mechanicus, couples face the most alien struggle of all. To love someone whose flesh is replaced by steel is to love something that the human eye no longer fully recognizes. A man may remember his wife's soft hands, but now they are claws of bronze and wires. A woman may recall her husband's warm voice, but it is gone, replaced by the mechanical tones of a Vox grill. Yet some persist, clinging to what remains human inside the machine. They trace the faint lines of flesh left beneath the augmetics, remembering what once was. Their struggle is not against priests or commissars, but against the slow erasure of humanity itself. Each surgery steals more, each replacement tears away what made them lovers, and still they cling to one another. To love someone in the cult mechanicus is to fight entropy itself, to declare that even when the flesh is gone, the heart still remembers. Voidfarers, those who spend lifetimes aboard colossal ships, suffer a different torment. Couples are separated not by law or war, but by the vastness of space. Assignments on different decks can feel like being banished to different planets. A wife may be stationed in the lower manufactorums, toiling amid deafening machines, while her husband is assigned to the upper decks to serve officers. They might pass one another only once every few months, catching glimpses across crowded corridors. For them, love is measured in stolen minutes, in brief touches as the ship's engines rumble like thunder. And when warp storms rage, separating entire sections of the ship, lovers may spend years apart, never knowing if the other still lives. Praying the vessel does not tear itself apart in the Imperium. What unites all these struggles is the quiet, desperate rebellion of couples who refuse to let love die. The Imperium does not want them to hold each other, to whisper promises, to choose one another over the state. It wants obedience, it wants sacrifice, it wants blood and silence. And yet, from the lowest hive to the grandest cathedral, couples defy it every day. They do so in secret, knowing that exposure could mean death, but they cannot help themselves. To be human is to love, and to love is to resist the machine of war that grinds all things into dust. The galaxy is merciless, but within its shadows, these fragile acts of devotion shine brighter than any star. A kiss shared under bombardment, a hand held as the pyre is lit, a whispered vow in the dark halls of a void ship. These are the victories the Imperium cannot erase. Couples struggle, they suffer, they break, but they endure. And in their endurance, they prove that even in the grim darkness of the far future, where there is only war, love refuses to be extinguished. In the ruins of war-torn worlds, where ash clouds blot out the stars and rubble is the only inheritance passed down through generations, couples fight to keep each other alive. Their homes are nothing but broken walls and collapsed ceilings, yet they make shelters from the debris, weaving scraps of fabric into makeshift bedding. A husband gathers firewood from shattered beams, even as the smell of burnt flesh lingers in the air, while his wife scavenges food from the corpses of battlefields, picking through pockets and satchels, abandoned by the dead. Every day is a trial of endurance, but within that trial, they share something more powerful than any prayer, a promise that neither will let go of the other. In whispered voices, they tell each other they will see the next dawn, though both know that dawn itself may never come. On planets held under the heel of occupation, love is shaped by fear. Couples live under the gaze of tyrants, whether chaos warbands, alien overlords, or even the Imperium's own harsh rulers. To display affection openly is to invite suspicion, as if love itself were a conspiracy. Soldiers see every clasped hand as rebellion, every kiss as defiance, and perhaps it is. A wife holding her husband's hand in the marketplace might be dragged away for interrogation, accused of plotting treachery. A husband who sneaks food to his wife in prison risks the executioner's bolt. Yet these acts persist, because they are all that remain of humanity in a world determined to strip it away. Love becomes a weapon, sharper than any blade, because it refuses to die even when everything else is crushed under boots. Couples endure torture, starvation, exile, and death sentences, not because they believe they will win, but because they cannot abandon one another. On feral worlds, the struggle takes on a primal form. These are planets where civilization has collapsed, and men and women live in tribes among beasts and ruins. Couples in such places endure the brutality of nature, the terror of predators, and the constant threat of rival clans. A husband may be forced to hunt with nothing more than a sharpened spear, returning with raw meat that his wife cleans and prepares with hands hardened by survival. Together they protect their children from marauding packs and twisted creatures that stalk the night. And yet, in caves lit by flickering firelight, they carve moments of tenderness from the savagery. They tell each other stories of a future where their family will be safe, even though such a future may never exist. Their love is not delicate. It is forged in blood and fire, raw and unyielding. It is a declaration that even on the edge of extinction, they will not face the void alone. Couples who serve within the Inquisition endure a different torment, one born of secrecy and distrust. An interrogator might marry another acolyte, bound by vows sworn in hidden chapels under the watch of silent skull servitors. But in such unions, there is no safety. Each partner knows that the other may be compelled to betray them for the sake of the emperor. A wife might report her husband's words to her master, fearing that he has strayed into heresy. A husband might be ordered to execute his wife, should her loyalty falter. They live in constant paranoia, torn between duty and devotion. When they share a glance, it is a fragile thing, hovering between suspicion and longing. They cling to one another in the rare moments where they are alone, because in the eyes of the Inquisition, love is weakness. Yet it persists, burning silently, even as every shadow threatens to consume it. For couples among the rogue traders, love is entangled with ambition and greed. These dynasties carve empires among the stars, and marriages are often tools of negotiation. A husband might see his wife as an alliance that grants him access to new trade routes, while she views him as a path to power and wealth. And yet, amidst the duplicity and politics, genuine love sometimes surfaces. In the void between stars, where entire crews depend on their ruler's whims, a husband may whisper to his wife not of riches, but of longing. A wife seated on a throne of gold and steel may look at her husband and see not a pawn, but the man who risked everything to keep her alive during mutiny. Their love becomes a secret pact, hidden behind masks of command. They cannot reveal it to their courts or rivals, for affection is weakness in the eyes of power. But in their private quarters, stripped of titles and intrigue, they cling to each other like drowning souls. For ordinary couples on frontier worlds, the struggle is quieter but no less grueling. These planets, barely tamed and scarcely defended, are the first to fall when war comes. Husbands and wives farm barren soil, praying that crops will grow before raiders descend. They build fragile homes of wood and stone, knowing they may burn at any moment. In these fragile years, love becomes their anchor. A wife works beside her husband in the fields, their backs bent under the same sun, their hands blistered from the same tools. When the sirens sound and the militia is called, she kisses him as though it might be the last time, because often it is. They endure the weight of impermanence, building lives that may crumble in a heartbeat. But for every moment they have together, they love fiercely, as though each heartbeat might be their last. Among the ecclesiarchy itself, couples face a torment unlike any other. A priest who falls in love breaks his vows. A sister who gives her heart betrays her oaths. For them, love is not merely forbidden, it is sacrilege. Yet it still happens. In the cloisters of vast cathedrals, a priest and a singer may meet in secret, their hands brushing as they exchange hymnals. In the shadow of relics, they whisper promises they know they cannot keep. Every stolen embrace risks excommunication or execution, yet they endure, because to deny their love feels like denying the very soul the emperor granted them. Their faith and their passion intertwine, each kiss a prayer, each vow a hymn. They are hunted not by war or famine, but by doctrine, and still they choose one another. What all these lives share is the simple, staggering truth that love is always rebellion. In the Imperium, where obedience is survival, to love another person fully and freely is to challenge the state itself. Couples cling to each other not just for comfort, but because in doing so they are saying, we are more than tools, we are more than soldiers, we are human. That defiance may not bring victory, it may not even bring survival, but it brings meaning. To love in the grim darkness of the far future is to plant a fragile seed in poisoned soil, knowing it may never bloom, but hoping, against all odds, that it might. In the far reaches of the galaxy, where war consumes entire star systems and hope itself feels like a forgotten relic, couples find themselves torn apart by forces far greater than their own lives. A husband may be conscripted into the Guard, whisked away to die on a nameless battlefield light years from home, while his wife is left behind on a planet that could fall to invasion at any moment. Their last embrace before separation is often hurried, stolen in the chaos of mobilization, as soldiers bark orders and transport ships roar overhead. Promises are whispered, voices cracking under the weight of desperation. I will come back to you, even though both know the chances of return are almost non-existent. Letters, if they ever arrive, are smudged with ash and blood, words of longing crossing the void between them. Yet, even across the cold expanse of space, love lingers, fragile but unyielding, a flame refusing to be extinguished by war's endless storm. Some couples endure not just distance, but transformation. A husband may be inducted into the Adeptus Astartes, his humanity stripped away piece by piece until nothing remains but a warrior of gene-forged muscle and unwavering loyalty to the Emperor. Wives are left mourning men who are not dead, but no longer truly human. They remember the gentle hand that once brushed their cheek, the smile that once warmed their hearts, and they look upon the space marine he has become, towering, armored, and unrecognizable. For these women, grief is endless. Their husbands live, but they belong not to them, not even to themselves, but to the Imperium. The men they once knew are ghosts locked inside ceramite tombs, and the wives are left with only memories. Some hold on, telling themselves that their love is eternal, even if it must exist in silence. Others let go because to love a Marine is to embrace an eternity of absence, a wound that can never heal. In hive cities, love is forced into shadows. Couples live in the choking smog where walls sweat rust and air tastes of chemicals. They share narrow bunks in overcrowded hab blocks, whispering words of affection while muffled by the constant hum of machinery. A husband may work 18 hours in a manufactorum, his skin blistered by molten metal, while his wife labors in the lower levels, sorting scrap until her hands bleed. When they meet, their bodies ache, their lungs rasp, but they still smile, still find joy in the smallest gestures, a kiss on a soot-covered cheek, a meal shared even if it is nothing more than recycled protein paste. They dream of escaping, of finding some forgotten corner of the galaxy where they can live in peace, but such dreams are dangerous. Hope in the Imperium is treason, yet still in the filth and ruin they cling to one another. Their love becomes their rebellion, proof that even in the heart of despair, humanity endures. For those who fall under the sway of chaos, love takes on a twisted form. Couples who once cherished each other are reshaped by corruption, their devotion used as a weapon by the dark gods. A husband might beg the ruinous powers to save his dying wife, only to see her reborn as a demon-touched creature, her beauty shattered into monstrous parody. And yet he still loves her, even as her eyes burn with unnatural fire, and her voice whispers in languages not meant for human ears. She too clings to him, her once gentle embrace now carrying claws that pierce his flesh. Their love is no less real, but it is poisoned, warped into something unholy. They fight together, kill together, and die together hand in hand, swallowed by the madness they chose, or perhaps the madness that chose them. To outsiders, it is horror. To them, it is still love, even in its most abominable form. Among the noble houses of the Imperium, couples face a different agony. Marriages are not unions of love but contracts, alliances forged to secure wealth, territory, or political influence. A husband may despise his wife, and she may despise him in return, but they stand together at ceremonies, smiling for the court while daggers rest in their hearts. Some couples endure this hollowness until it consumes them, their lives little more than performances staged for power. Yet others find ways to kindle something real in the ashes of false vows. A wife may discover tenderness in the man she was forced to marry, glimpses of humanity beneath his cold ambition. A husband may come to admire the strength in a woman who refuses to bow to the suffocating weight of politics. These rare sparks of love burn all the brighter for being forbidden. In the labyrinth of betrayal and intrigue, genuine affection becomes their only sanctuary, a fragile shield against the cruelty of their world. On frontier colonies, the struggles are brutal in their simplicity. Couples live in constant fear of raids from Xenos, heretics, or pirates. They build their homes from stone and scrap, working side by side to till stubborn soil. At night, they sit under alien skies, holding each other tightly, listening to the distant sounds of battle. Every kiss feels like the last, every embrace a farewell. And when the attacks come, they fight together, not as soldiers, but as desperate lovers who refuse to let go. A wife may fire a lace gun until her hands blister, standing over her husband's wounded body. A husband may throw himself into the jaws of a beast to give his wife a chance to flee. They die together as often as they live together, but they never face the void alone. Their love is carved into the soil of their world, written in blood and fire, and even after death. It lingers as a ghost upon the land they tried to claim. For those within the Mechanicus, love is a forbidden concept. Flesh is weakness, and to cling to another is to cling to imperfection. Yet even here, among steel and circuitry, couples emerge. A husband might confess his devotion in binary, strings of machine code, whispered into his wife's audio implants. A wife might preserve fragments of her husband's human face within her memory banks, treasuring the remnants of the man he once was. Their love becomes something mechanical, reshaped into data and logic, but no less profound. They do not kiss or embrace, for their bodies are more machine than flesh, but they share connection through wires, through shared consciousness. In the silence of cogitators and the hum of reactors, their love exists in pulses of energy, small and hidden, yet eternal. It is not the love of mortals, but it is love all the same, surviving even in a world that denies its existence. Love in the Imperium is never gentle. It is never easy. It is always tested by war, by famine, by tyranny, by despair. And yet, in every dark corner of the galaxy, couples endure. They are not heroes. They are not remembered. But their struggles to hold on to one another are the quiet heartbeats of humanity itself. For in a galaxy where death is certain and suffering is endless, love is the only thing that makes survival worth the pain. On countless worlds across the galaxy, where the night sky is painted with burning warships and the ground trembles beneath the march of titans, couples fight for the simple right to exist. The Imperium does not see them as lovers or families, but as assets, numbers, bodies to be spent in the unending war. A man may be conscripted into the Astra Militarum on the day of his wedding, torn from his bride before the vows are even spoken. A woman may find herself pressed into the endless labor of munitions factories, her hands shredded and lungs filled with poison as she produces the shells that will kill nameless enemies in a war she will never see. Their marriage exists in fragments, shared memories, stolen hours, whispered prayers to the Emperor that they will one day see each other again. And yet, those prayers are often left unanswered. The grim machinery of survival does not pause for love. In the cold reaches of space, aboard the lumbering fortress ships of the Imperium, couples discover that intimacy is nearly impossible. They live in narrow quarters surrounded by noise, servitors, and ever-watchful commissars. A husband and wife might snatch a moment in the shadows of an underdeck corridor, the scent of oil and incense heavy in the air, where their whispered promises drown beneath the roar of engines. The fear of being caught, of being branded, distracted, undisciplined, or even heretical hangs over them with every touch. Yet those fleeting moments are treasures. A stolen embrace in the flicker of lumen strips can mean more than a lifetime of comfort in any peaceful world. When one is sent to the front lines and the other is left behind, they carry those small fragments of warmth into the void, clinging to them as if they were lifelines in the storm. On shrine worlds, love is a different form of torment. Couples are bound not only to one another, but to the crushing weight of devotion. A husband and wife may be assigned as penitents. their backs scarred by whips as they crawl through sacred avenues in endless acts of atonement. Their love survives in glances, in shared endurance, in the quiet strength of knowing that someone suffers with you. And yet, the ecclesiarchy demands that their devotion to the emperor come before all else. A wife who cries for her husband's pain is chastised for weakness, told her only love should be for him on Terra. Still they cling to each other, even in silence. In candlelit chapels filled with smoke and prayer, their hands may brush for only a second, but in that touch lies rebellion. For in a galaxy where faith crushes the soul as much as it uplifts it, their love becomes the only truth they can claim for themselves. For couples bound to the underhive, love is survival against the odds. They live among gangs and mutants, their lives measured in food scraps and stolen water. A husband might fight in the pits, his body bruised and broken, while his wife barters in the black market, risking death at the hands of enforcers for a few more rations. They cannot afford rings, vows, or ceremony. Their love is written in scars, in the way she binds his wounds with scraps of cloth, in the way he stands between her and the gangs that would take her. Every day together is a victory. Every night spent alive is proof that their bond is stronger than the filth and the decay around them. They do not dream of eternity. They only dream of tomorrow. And in that fragile dream, their love grows stronger than any oath spoken in a cathedral of gold. Some couples endure the horrors of the warp itself. A ship carrying colonists may be lost within that shifting nightmare, its passengers forced to cling to sanity as reality unravels. A husband holds his wife as whispers claw at their minds, as impossible visions turn her eyes hollow. She trembles in his arms, begging him not to let go, and he swears he never will, even as their bodies twist in the unreality of chaos. Sometimes one survives while the other is claimed, and the survivor carries that wound forever, haunted by the memory of love devoured by the abyss. Sometimes impossibly both endure, their bond becoming a fortress against madness. Where faith in the emperor falters, their love remains, an anchor stronger than dogma. It does not always save them, but it keeps them human a little longer in a place where humanity is meant to break. Couples among the nobility live in gilded cages, surrounded by luxury yet shackled by expectations. A wife may never see her husband except during formal occasions, as each is sent to different courts to uphold alliances. They write to one another in secret, letters filled with longing hidden beneath layers of coded language, their true feelings disguised as politics. When they do meet, it is often in fleeting moments between obligations, a hurried touch of hands beneath a banquet table, a stolen kiss behind a velvet curtain. They may sleep in separate wings of a palace, but their hearts beat in unison across the cold marble halls. Their love becomes an act of resistance against the chains of wealth and duty, fragile yet unbreakable. For in a world where power devours sincerity, their devotion is a rare and dangerous truth. Some of the most tragic couples are those touched by mutation. A husband, once strong and proud, may find his body twisted by exposure to radiation or the creeping corruption of the warp. His wife, horrified but steadfast, tends to him as his humanity slips away. Society casts them out, branding them heretics, forcing them into the shadows where survival is uncertain. Yet she does not abandon him. She holds his deformed hand, kisses the face others call monstrous, and whispers that he is still the man she loves. Together they flee into exile, hunted by purges, clinging to the only thing that still feels real between them. In the dark caves or abandoned ruins they call home, their love burns brighter than ever, because it is all they have left. And when the Inquisition finally finds them, their last moments are together, unrepentant, proof that even in damnation, love endures. On war-torn worlds, couples face choices that would shatter anyone else. A husband may be forced to decide between saving his wife or protecting a group of strangers. A wife may sacrifice herself to buy her husband time to escape, dying with a smile as she tells him to keep running. Their love becomes a battlefield of its own, where sacrifice is inevitable, and survival is fleeting. Sometimes both perish, their bodies lying side by side in the ruins of their home. Other times, one survives, carrying the unbearable weight of love lost, using it as fuel to fight, to endure, to live in a galaxy that has already stolen everything else. For these survivors, love becomes both curse and blessing. It breaks them, but it also keeps them standing because they refuse to let the memory of their partner die. Even among the Adepta Sororitas, whispers of forbidden love sometimes bloom. A sister may find her heart drawn to another, bound by shared oaths of service and sacrifice. They kneel side by side in prayer, their voices rising together in hymns, but when no one is watching, their eyes linger too long. They know it is heresy, that their vows demand nothing but devotion to the Emperor, but still their love blossoms in silence. They may never confess it aloud, but it shapes them, gives them strength. When one falls in battle, the other fights with a fury that defies comprehension, their grief hidden behind holy fire. To love in the sororitas is to risk damnation, but also to claim humanity in the face of unrelenting zeal. It is a dangerous secret, but it is also unbreakable, carved into their souls as deeply as any vow of faith. For couples across the galaxy, love is not a sanctuary. It is a battlefield, a burden, a fragile defiance against a universe built to crush it. They endure distance, transformation, loss, and exile. They are not heroes. They are not sung in hymns or etched into monuments. But their struggles reveal a truth the Imperium cannot erase, that even in the darkest of times, when hope itself is a crime, love is still possible. And in a galaxy where everything ends in blood and fire, that simple truth may be the most powerful rebellion of all. In the ruins of war-torn cities, where entire continents lie shattered by orbital bombardments and the skies are thick with smoke, couples cling to one another not for comfort, but for survival. Love in such places is not spoken in gentle words, nor celebrated with festivals or blessings. It is carved into the broken stones of their homes, written in blood and ash, and tested every single day by the cruelty of the galaxy. A man may hold his wife's hand as they run through burning streets, shells falling around them, knowing that at any moment death may tear them apart. A woman may cradle her husband's head as he bleeds from wounds he cannot recover from, whispering promises she knows she cannot keep. These moments define their love, not joy, but endurance, not celebration, but sacrifice. Every step, every breath, every shared glance becomes an act of defiance against a universe that wants them broken. Sometimes the test comes in the form of impossible choices. In a collapsing hive spire, a husband may have to choose between pulling his wife to safety or saving the strangers screaming below. His heart knows only one answer, but his faith demands another. In the grim darkness of the Imperium, duty to the Emperor often weighs heavier than duty to love. And yet, when the fire rises and the metal screams, some choose their partners over their oaths, damning themselves for eternity but claiming a fragment of happiness in the instant before the end. Others obey the creed, letting go of their partner's hand to save the many, carrying forever the guilt of a choice that destroyed the one person who gave them strength. Neither path is merciful. Both leave scars that never fade. Love becomes a burden too heavy for most to bear, yet couples in the Imperium bear it still, because to let go is to surrender the only piece of humanity left to them. On frontier worlds, where tyranids descend like a living tide, couples face the horror of annihilation together. They watch the sky tear open with spores, see the ground churn as biobeasts claw their way into reality. A husband might stand with a rusted laser gun, his wife clutching his arm as the swarm grows closer, both knowing that the fight is hopeless. Yet they stand anyway. Their final words are not prayers to the Emperor, not even curses at the monsters devouring their world. They are whispers to each other, fragments of a love story that will end in screams. Some are torn apart, their deaths swallowed by the alien tide, but others choose a different ending. They press the muzzles of their guns beneath their chins, deciding to die in each other's arms, rather than be consumed alive. Their final act is a choice, a refusal to let the galaxy take from them the last thing that is truly theirs, the way they leave it. There are couples who survive the devastation only to live in worse torment. A wife may watch her husband dragged away by the Inquisition, accused of heresy simply for surviving a battle the Inquisitors deem suspicious. She screams his name as black-robed figures pull him into the shadows, her nails bleeding as she claws against their grasp. But there is no mercy. He vanishes into dungeons she will never see, and she is left to carry the weight of silence. Perhaps she searches for him for years, bribing officials, sneaking into archives, praying to find a clue. Perhaps she never hears his name again, but her love does not die. It festers into obsession, into grief, into a hollow wound that never closes. In a galaxy of endless war, even survival can be the cruelest fate for couples, because to survive is not to live together, but to live haunted. Among refugees, love is stripped down to its most basic form. Couples huddle in the cold, sharing scraps of food, wrapping themselves in rags just to keep each other alive for another day. They do not dream of futures, of children, of homes. Their only dream is to make it to the next sunrise. A husband may let himself starve so that his wife can eat, smiling through cracked lips as he pretends he is not hungry. A wife may sell her body to guards or smugglers, hiding her shame as she presses the food into her husband's hands, lying that she found it by luck. Each act wounds them, but each act also proves their devotion. In a world where survival demands cruelty, love makes them soft, vulnerable, and yet it also gives them the will to endure when all others fall. For every refugee who gives up, there is another who survives only because their partner will not let them quit. There are times when couples become legends, their stories whispered by survivors long after they are gone. On a besieged agri-world, a farmer and his wife might fight side by side against chaos cultists, defending their home with nothing but farming tools and desperation. They died together in their fields, their bodies found embracing, their blood soaking into the soil they once tended. The story spreads across the survivors like fire. They become symbols not of military might or faith, but of love strong enough to endure even the jaws of madness. Soldiers carry their tale into battle, repeating their names as if they were saints. And though the Imperium will never carve statues in their honor, their love becomes immortal, surviving in the whispered prayers of those who remember that even in the darkest hour, devotion can still shine. In some places, however, love itself is seen as weakness. A commissar may execute a soldier for hesitating on the battlefield because he could not bear to leave his wife behind. A priest may denounce a couple for daring to put each other above the emperor. And yet the more it is forbidden, the more fiercely couples cling to one another. A stolen kiss in a trench, a hand reaching out in the smoke of battle, a whispered vow spoken as shells fall. These moments are precious precisely because they are dangerous. To love in a galaxy of cruelty is not just an emotion, but an act of rebellion. The Imperium tells its citizens they belong to the Emperor, that their hearts, their lives, their futures are his alone. But couples defy that every day, giving their hearts to each other instead, daring to put love before duty. And though it costs them dearly, it is a defiance worth dying for. In the end, the galaxy does not care. Tyranids devour, chaos corrupts, orcs burn, and the Imperium grinds its citizens into ash. Love is fragile, fleeting, doomed more often than not. And yet it persists. It persists in the way a wife cradles her husband's body in the ruins of their home. It persists in the way a husband waits for years for a wife who never returns from war. It persists in the way two lovers die in each other's arms, refusing to let the galaxy separate them, even in death. In the grim darkness of the far future, love is not salvation. It cannot save worlds, it cannot defeat armies, it cannot undo the horror. But for those who feel it, love remains the last spark of humanity in a universe built to erase it. And sometimes that spark is enough to keep them alive one day longer, to give meaning to a life that otherwise would have none. In the hidden corners of hive cities, deep below the polluted skies and endless factories, couples struggle to survive in ways that few outsiders could ever imagine. For them, survival is not measured in victories or faith, but in stolen hours, whispered promises, and the fragile thread of love stretched against the crushing weight of the Imperium. A husband might work endless shifts in the manufactorums, his lungs blackened from the fumes, just to bring home a ration pack to his wife. She, in turn, might barter scraps of food with dangerous gangers, risking violence or worse, so that the two of them can share one more meal together. Each act becomes an expression of love, though the galaxy will never recognize it as such. To others, they are just faceless workers in an uncaring empire. But to each other, they are the reason to endure another day in a world designed to break them. Sometimes the struggle is not against hunger or exhaustion, but against the ever-present suspicion of the Imperium. A woman may see her husband whispering to her in the shadows, telling her that he dreams of escape, of fleeing their world and finding freedom beyond the stars. She knows such words are dangerous, treasonous even, but she cannot bring herself to report him. Instead, she holds those dreams close, nurturing them even as she fears the day an inquisitor might arrive. Their love becomes a secret war, fought against the ever-watchful eyes of priests and overseers. Each kiss shared in private feels like defiance, each touch an act of rebellion. They know that if discovered, they will be torn apart, executed, or worse. Yet they choose to love anyway. In a galaxy where even thoughts can be dangerous, to love someone more than the Emperor himself is the most daring choice of all. Couples living in war zones suffer in even crueler ways. When invasion comes, whether from orcs, tyranids, or the forces of chaos, husbands and wives are forced into decisions no one should face. A husband may be conscripted into the Imperial Guard, sent to die on distant fields of war, leaving his wife behind with only the hope that she will one day see him again. But hope is fragile in the Imperium. Letters never arrive, bodies are never returned, and names vanish into casualty lists too long to read. Wives stand in food lines with their children, wondering if their husbands are still alive or if they died screaming in mud on some nameless planet. Some women receive word years later that their husbands died in their first battle, and yet they lived all that time believing they still might return. The cruelty of that hope cuts deeper than any wound. On other worlds, couples fight side by side, their love forged in blood and fire. A husband and wife may join a planetary militia, standing shoulder to shoulder as shells fall and enemies swarm. They fight, not because they believe in victory, but because they believe in each other. He pulls her from the rubble of a collapsing wall, his hands bleeding, his lungs burning. She steadies his rifle when he falters, screaming at him to keep fighting. When one of them falls, the other does not retreat, but fights on with even greater fury, as if by destroying enough enemies they can undo the cruel fate that has separated them. Sometimes they fall together, their bodies found entwined on the battlefield, their hands still clutching one another, even in death. These couples become stories whispered among survivors, legends of devotion that burn brighter than the Emperor's light, if only for a fleeting moment. For some, survival is even crueler than death. There are wives who watch their husbands dragged into servitorization, stripped of flesh and will, turned into mindless machines that serve forever without recognition. They see the blank, mechanical face of the man they once loved, now devoid of memory, of soul, of the warmth that once made him human. She may whisper his name as he passes by, hoping that somewhere, in the remnants of his mind, he still remembers. But there is no recognition, no spark of love, no response. He is gone, yet still present, a cruel mockery of the life they once shared. The galaxy does not offer closure. It offers only torment, forcing the living to watch the hollow shells of their partners walk forever in servitude. In the rarest moments, couples find strength in each other, even in the most horrific circumstances. On death worlds, where survival is measured in minutes, husbands and wives become each other's lifelines. They share everything: food, shelter, weapons, even the burden of despair. A man may carry his wife across a poisonous swamp, his flesh burning from toxins, just to see her live one more day. A woman may stand between her husband and a predator, her body torn apart, while giving him the chance to run. These acts are not celebrated, not remembered by the Imperium. Yet for those who experience them, they are the truest form of devotion. In a galaxy built to erase humanity, love still creates moments of sacrifice so pure that even the darkness cannot extinguish them. But not all couples are allowed to stay together. The Imperium itself often tears them apart. When a world is conquered, or a hive city conscripted, husbands are sent to war while wives remain, or wives are taken into labor camps while husbands are pressed into servitude. Some never see each other again, and yet they live every day clinging to the hope that they will. This hope sustains them. A man may endure the agony of war because he imagines returning to his wife's arms. A woman may work herself to death in a factory because she dreams of seeing her husband's face once more. Most of these reunions never come. The galaxy devours their lives before they can find one another again. Yet the thought of reunion, even if false, becomes a fuel stronger than faith. In the rare moments when couples do survive together, their love is not gentle. It is scarred, ragged, forged in fire and loss. A husband may cradle his wife with one arm while the other is a mechanical replacement, a reminder of battles survived. A wife may kiss her husband's lips stained with radiation burns, holding him, even though she knows his time is short. Their love is not a fairy tale. It is broken, battered, soaked in blood, but it is real. And in a galaxy where everything is twisted by war, corruption, and death, something real is the greatest miracle of all. The Imperium does not celebrate such couples. There are no holidays for lovers, no blessings for marriages, no monuments for husbands and wives who endured together. The Imperium demands loyalty to the Emperor, not to one another. Yet quietly, in the shadows of hive cities, in the trenches of war, in the ruins of homes, couples continue to love each other in defiance of everything the galaxy throws at them. Their stories are not recorded in archives or sung in hymns. They exist only in the fleeting glances, the final words, the shared breaths before death. And perhaps that is enough, because in Warhammer 40K, where hope is a lie and survival is fleeting, love itself becomes a weapon. Not a weapon to win wars or conquer galaxies, but a weapon to endure, to resist, to remain human. Couples cling to one another because without that bond, the galaxy would consume them completely. And though their stories may never be known beyond their final breaths, they remind us that even in the grim darkness of the far future, love persists, not as salvation, but as defiance. Across the endless expanse of the Imperium, couples cling to one another, not because their love makes survival easy, but because it makes survival possible. To be together in the 41st millennium is to endure 1,000 small battles every day against hunger, suspicion, fear, and the grinding cruelty of a galaxy that has no space for tenderness. A husband may return from the front lines broken, his body burned and his spirit scarred, but his wife takes his trembling hands and whispers to him that he is still whole. A wife may collapse from exhaustion after endless shifts in the manufactorums, her skin cracked and blackened by ash, but her husband carries her through the smoke-choked streets because he refuses to let her fall alone. In these fragile acts, love is not a fleeting comfort. It is an act of rebellion against despair itself. For many, survival together is more brutal than dying apart. Couples live under the constant shadow of suspicion, where even a private expression of love may be seen as weakness or heresy. Inquisitors and priests remind the faithful that devotion to the Emperor must come before all else. But in the quiet behind locked doors, a husband and wife kneel together not in prayer, but in a shared silence that binds them more deeply than any sermon. They know the risk. They feel the weight of the Imperium's gaze, but they refuse to surrender the intimacy that keeps them human. Each embrace becomes dangerous, each word of affection a silent crime. Yet they continue, because love is the only truth they can claim as their own. For some, the galaxy's cruelty rips them apart violently, Wives watch their husbands dragged away by the Astra Militarum, pressed into the guard with rifles shoved into their hands, never to be seen again. Husbands search the wreckage of bombed hab blocks, screaming their wives' names only to find silence in the smoke. And yet even in absence, love remains. Letters are written that will never be read. Prayers are spoken for voices that will never answer. And names are carved into walls so that memory endures, even when flesh is gone. These echoes of devotion linger like ghosts, haunting the ruined cities of the Imperium. There are rare moments when couples find each other again after years, and these reunions are bittersweet. A husband may return from war scarred beyond recognition, his body rebuilt with augmetics, his mind fractured by what he has seen. His wife may have aged decades in hardship, her face lined by hunger and grief. And yet, when they meet, their eyes recognize each other instantly, as if no time has passed. They cling together desperately, knowing their future may hold only more pain, but also knowing they have found what so many in the Imperium never do, the chance to love again. Even for a little while, some couples never stop fighting. On war-torn worlds, husbands and wives take up lace guns side by side, not as soldiers of the Emperor, but as warriors for each other. When shells explode and enemies descend, they refuse to be separated. A husband shields his wife with his own body, taking the impact of a tyrannid claw that would have torn her apart. A wife drags her husband's broken form through the mud, firing wildly at the advancing orcs as she refuses to abandon him. They know their efforts are hopeless, but hopelessness has never stopped love before. If they must die, they will die together, leaving behind a story written not in archives, but in the whispers of survivors who tell of their defiance. And then there are the cruelest fates. Some couples are denied even the dignity of dying together. Husbands turned into servitors march past their wives as if strangers, their eyes vacant, their humanity stripped away. Wives infected by chaos corruption are burned alive before the eyes of their screaming husbands, their love erased in the name of purity. These moments shatter what little hope remains, and yet even then, love refuses to fully die. Husbands whisper their wives' names to themselves over and over until the sound is all they have left. Wives cradle broken relics of their husbands, dog tags, photographs, scraps of fabric, as if holding these objects could summon their presence back. For some, the only way to survive is to create love where none should exist. Couples form in refugee camps, in ruined hives, in shattered regiments of guardsmen. Strangers cling together out of desperation, and from that desperation grows devotion. A woman may fall in love with the man who shared his last piece of bread with her. A man may pledge his heart to the woman who pulled him from beneath rubble. In a galaxy where everything is fleeting, even these desperate bonds become sacred. They may not last, but for the time they do, they keep two souls alive. At the edges of the Imperium, where life is harshest, couples become legends. A husband and wife who survived the fall of a world may be remembered in songs whispered around campfires. A pair of lovers who fought chaos cults together may become symbols of defiance for a whole generation. These legends are rarely written in official records. They exist in memory, in rumor, in the hearts of those who saw them fight not for duty or the Emperor, but for each other. These couples are proof that love, even in its most fragile form, can inspire others to endure. But the galaxy never stops trying to break them. Every sunrise is another trial. Every breath together is stolen from a universe that would rather see them separated, consumed, or erased. And yet they endure. Husbands and wives continue to hold hands in secret, continue to share food even when rations are thin, continue to whisper promises in the dark. They know the truth. Their love will not change the galaxy, will not stop the wars, will not bring peace. But it will give them one more day of humanity in a world that devours it. And for them, that is enough. Because in Warhammer 40K, survival is not just about enduring hunger, war, or despair. It is about clinging to the one thing the galaxy cannot take unless you surrender it, the bond between two people who refuse to let go of each other. Couples in the grim darkness know their love will not last forever. They know their story will end in death, silence, or corruption. But until that moment comes, they fight for each other. And in that fight, in that quiet defiance, they create something the Imperium cannot control. They create meaning